Welcome to another episode of Custom Cards. As you can see, I'm back in my trusty Bilgewater Tavern, so that means that we're going to do user submissions. No set review. Last time we did the Ishtal region. This time we're just going to be looking at individual cards that people submitted on the Sunny Discord. So first off, if you want to submit your custom cards, make sure you join the Discord. The submissions are closed right now because I like to do these videos once every 2 weeks, so I give a certain period where people can submit their cards. That is now closed, but it will be open in the very near future. So with that out of the way, let's just jump right into it and start looking at some cards. The first card I have here is by Deadeye. It's a 3-mana Noxus card, Triferium Paragon. When I'm summoned, if you behold Darius, LeBlanc, or Swain, grab me Overwhelm, Quick Attack, or Fearsome respectively, and it's a 3/3. I think this card is awesome for the flavor that it has, because there are Noxian cards like Guile, Vision, and Might, which have like the head of their leader of sorts, like of that aspect of Noxus. I'm not really sure how to explain it because I'm not fully updated on the lore, but I really like that this goes even like more in on that. Swain has Fearsome as a keyword, LeBlanc has Quick Attack, Darius has Overwhelm, and it's very like it's thematic for what they do, especially in Runeterra itself. So very often these three champions are not played in a deck together. I could see like a LeBlanc Darius deck though, but Swain feels kind of like an outsider, so that's probably the option that you're never going to get. A 3/3 Fearsome is not like super impressive either, you know, especially with a card like Merciless Hunter in the game. But I think you could probably run a Darius LeBlanc deck, and giving this Overwhelm and Quick Attack is actually pretty potent, especially with like some attack buffs. That can get out of hand pretty fast. So I'm just a really big fan of the flavor of this card more than necessarily the usage in game. Very well done by Deadeye. Great start to this series, and let's jump on to the next card. Next I have a card by Dazul, Embrace the Night. 4-mana slow Targon spell. Grant all non-Nightfall allies everywhere Nightfall. Give me +1/+0 this round. If I am a champion, grant me +2/+2 instead. This is kind of like out of the way, where you play a card one time, and then they have this effect the entire game long every time you activate Nightfall. Out of the way, that's kind of the same thing, where you have to play a very expensive card once, and then you have a very powerful effect for the rest of the game, but you have to like sacrifice one super slow turn to get the effect going, and this is exactly like that. So the interesting part about this is that in Nightfall decks, you would usually play Diana and Nocturne. They don't actually get that benefit from that +2/+2. So, funnily enough, if you're playing a Daybreak deck, this would actually be a very powerful card, because you're playing a Daybreak unit, and then every Daybreak unit after that, instead of having their Daybreak effect, they get this effect. Like imagine this with a Ravoon on the board. You play Ravoon, and then you play Leona, and Leona stuns and gets +2/+2. I don't think it's like super good, because you would want to play this outside of Nightfall. And then the question really becomes, how good is a card like this outside of Nightfall? Because you'd still want to be playing Diana. You'd probably still want to play Nocturne, except maybe you can go more in on Targon with this card. So the application, I'm not entirely sure, but I just think it's like a really cool thematic idea, and it could give Nightfall like some flexibility, because I think it's actually one of the coolest things in Runeterra. It just doesn't see that much play, which is a real shame, and a card like this could open that archetype up again. There's another card from Dazul, 3-mana Targon, slow speed, Convert the Heretics. Grant all non-Daybreak allies everywhere Daybreak. Create a hand, a spell from a region that costs 1 less. So this is obviously very similar to the Embrace the Night card, except instead of Nightfall, it's for Daybreak. I actually think this effect is more powerful, because creating a random spell rather than getting +1 for 1 turn is much better. But this one costs 3 mana, so I guess that is because overall Daybreak units are weaker. But while I'm saying that, I'm not really sure that matters, because it's for all non-Daybreak allies. So if you're playing something like Mono Targon, this would be a super powerful card, because you're just generating more cards. Like every single turn, you're generating at least 1 card. Oh, I guess that's why this one is cheaper, because for the 4 mana, that's an effect you can proc multiple times. Daybreak is technically, you can only do it once per turn, unless you have Ravoon, but I don't feel like this goes into a Ravoon deck. So once again, these two cards, just for their thematic, super cool, super fitting for Targon too. And yeah, I just really like where Dazul went with the Daybreak and Nightfall support. Very good way to give the archetype some new flexibility, and maybe it will see play in a completely different direction than what we're used to. Alright, for these next cards, I know I don't want to play favorites, but one of my favorite champions is Victor, and Nolan has made some very cool Victor support cards. The first one is a 2-mana 1/3 from Piltover. Guardbot, Augment. I have Challenger when I have 3 or more power. This is such a simple card, but the fact that this effect like activates once you've augmented at least 2 times, or you know, you can also play buffs on it. I could see this in something like for example, a Lux deck. Just imagine playing this on turn 2 with Lux. Like, not only does that deck generate cards quite often, like for example the Lux lasers, but that is Demacia, so you're also going to have cards like Sharpsight, just activating this instantly. I really love these type of cards that have like multiple applications that you can use in multiple different ways. Like Augment is the obvious one, but just buffing it is another option. Like, what about Gems? Gems would work too. Having a card fit in different type of decks because their effect can be activated in different ways is just, I love it. It's exactly what Runeterra is all about. It's what enables Runeterra's flexible deck building, how you can take certain cards in so many different directions. Most of them, you know, not all of them. Some are pretty limited still. But cards like this, I love it. This is what I really like to see. And Nolan has been submitting cards, and honestly, they've just all been amazing. So, once again, amazing job on this card. Next, there's another card by Nolan. It's the Augmented Scavenger, 1-mana, 1/1 from Piltover. Augment. The first time I have 3+ power, draw 1. Just like the guard bot, this is just a super simple card. When you give this little bird here 3 power, you draw a card. That's a super sweet effect, and honestly, it kind of reminds me of something like Dragon Chow. And we all know what Dragon Chow has done for Dragon decks. A simple effect like this, super cool. You do have to do some work for it, but honestly, you play this on turn 1, you play your Ballistic Bot, and then you use 1 or 2 ignitions, and you're already gonna be super close to activating this. It also creates counterplay for the opponent where they can just remove this by dealing 1 damage, like a Val Feast, a Thermogenic Beam on turn 1. It feels super fair, and I would love to play with cards like this in a Victor deck. Alright, after seeing some of these spells and followers, I think it's about time we look at our first champion made by Vispectra. 2-mana 2/2, Kaisa. Void Region. Allied buffs on me are permanent, except barrier. Whenever you target anything, move me a card closer to the top of your deck. If I am already your top card, draw me. Level up, I have attack with 6+ power or 6+ health, or 2 keywords. Some of you might remember Vispectra, creator of the Void expansion that I made a video on a few months ago. So I thought it was cool to kind of like go back on that and look at some of the cards that were also created for that expansion later on. And Kaisa is one of them. And what I really like about this is that for the out of the way card, Kaisa does her little KDA dance, and her effect on this card is exactly like out of the way. Allied buffs on me are permanent. You play a Pill Cascade on Kaisa. She is a 3/3 permanently. Also, I gotta give credit to Vispectra for not giving Kaisa Quick Attack. Every other champion in the game has Quick Attack. Kaisa doesn't, even though, you know, she could just be like a mini Akshan. Vispectra didn't do it, and I respect that, because it would have been the easy thing to do. This is very, very powerful, especially combined with Targon, obviously, because they have so many good buffs. Actually, I say that, but a lot of Targon buffs are actually already permanent. So maybe this would be better with something like Demacia for their sharp sights, for their chain vests, stuff like that. Kaisa, yeah, Kaisa might actually be good with Demacia. I can't fully remember the Void set. I don't know how many buffs were in that set. I don't think there were that many, so that means that Kaisa would have to be pretty flexible in what region she goes with. But there is also that second part. Whenever you target anything, move me a card closer to the top of your deck. And if she is the top card, you draw her. So that does give the opponent like some hand reading. If you play a buff and you suddenly draw something, it's like, oh, well, there's a Kaisa in the enemy hand. Maybe I should save my Mystic Shot or something. With that, I think her level up is also super interesting. You need to get Kaisa to reach one of those thresholds. And that is actually just like her in League, where you need to have a certain amount of AP, attack damage, or attack speed, I believe, to get her evolves. I'm not a Kaisa player, so I'm not exactly sure. But I know that to upgrade her abilities, you do need to invest in one certain stat. And that's in this card in her level up too. So super thematic, really, really cool. But let's also look at her level 2 to see what she actually does. So the same thing, allied buffs on me are permanent. And grant them to all Kaisa everywhere. Whenever you target anything, move me a card close to the top of your deck. If I am already your top card, summon me. That could be really scary. So what I'm not sure about is when you level Kaisa with, for example, 6 power, because you've played a Thorn Blade on her. If you play a Thorn Blade, she becomes a 7/2. You attack with her, she would level. Does that mean that after level up, every Kaisa is now at 7/2 or 8/3 because she gets +1/+1 from level up? I'm gonna assume that it is, and that's super cool. Like, imagine leveling Kaisa, opponent kills her, and then suddenly you target literally anything. Kaisa moves up, and then suddenly she gets summoned on the board as an 8-3. You could just be using your burst speed or your focus speed spells to set up an open attack. Suddenly, Kaisa pops out of the deck and starts the attack with you. That's super scary. And honestly, a very powerful and simple effect that I can really appreciate. And her level up is like Rek'Sai. You don't actually need to strike. All you need to do is start an attack with 6 power, 6 health, or 2 keywords. This actually does make me think that Kaisa Akshan would be a super powerful deck. You use 1 Shapestone on her, and then you get 1 more attack from something, and she levels. I could totally see Kaisa Akshan decks. So honestly, super cool addition to the Void expansion, really. And as you guys might notice, I really enjoy these simpler concepts. Like, just take a simple card. You don't need 3 token cards. You don't need an extra tribe to make a card playable or interesting. Just make the card flexible, make it fit in different decks, make it kind of like ambiguous for deck building. Let the people that look at the cards figure it out, and that's how you create a super interesting card. And so far, all the cards that we've seen, I think did an amazing job at that. So let's move on to another interesting summon kind of card, because where Kaisa can kind of start an open attack if you target something, and she will pop out of your deck. Have created something similar for Galio's ult in League of Legends. Hero's Entrance. 0 mana focus speed from Demacia. Pay a unit's mana cost to summon it from your hand. So this is kind of like a Jarvan effect, except you get to choose what unit you summon from hand. This could be extremely powerful. Like, imagine using this on something like a Pharaon. You pay 8 mana, which you always do. You summon it from hand, you create 2 Decimates in hand, and you get to start an open attack with an 8/8 Overwhelm unit. Honestly, this card might be a little bit too strong, but I think it's super thematic for something like Galio's ult in League of Legends, where there's an ally somewhere, and then suddenly, when you think you're about to kill them, suddenly Galio pops out of the air, lands, knocks you up, and protects his ally. I actually do kind of feel like you would have to pay 1 more mana maybe for this. Like, this would be a 1 mana focus speed, and then if you're trying to summon an 8 mana unit, you would have to pay 9 for it, because starting an open attack for free can be really, really, really powerful. For example, with support units like Lulu or Shen. The hard part is that you have to drop them on the board first, and then your opponent can like summon something to block them, because it is all about their support effect and not about the actual unit themselves. So right now, the Demacia, Ionia elusive decks are being played a lot, and this card would be very, very powerful in that deck. Starting an open attack with an elusive unit, or with a Lulu or a Zed, is super scary, and I'm not sure if I really want to go there. So I would prefer this to be a little more expensive than just paying like the unit's mana fair and square. Make it a little more expensive, and this card would fit right into the game. Next is a card by Yuri. He made Bart from Targon. 4 mana 2/5 with Spell Shield. Strike, create a Meep in hand. Level up, you have invoked 5+ times this game. And a Meep is a 1 mana 1/1 ephemeral. Last breath, reduce the cost of your most expensive card in hand by 1. So Bart likes invoking. Celestial units can be pretty expensive, and Meeps reduce their cost by 1. Bart doesn't have quick attack though, so striking with him might actually be a little difficult, but he is very good at blocking. And he does have a spell shield, so he's not going to be just removed very easily. With a level up like that, where you have to invoke 5 times. 5 times is a lot, by the way. Like, don't underestimate that. But the fact that there is invoke synergy, and the fact that Meep reduces the cost of the most expensive unit in hand by 1, makes me think that a Bart Aurelion Soul deck would be super legit. Like, it all fits together perfectly. So after you invoke 5 times, Bart levels up and he gets regeneration. Whenever you invoke, create a fleeting copy of that card in hand and reduce its cost by 1. Strike, create a Meep in hand. That is a super interesting level up, but it doesn't really play perfectly with the more expensive invoke units. Obviously, if you use a Star Shaping at 13 mana and you find a Great Beyond, you can play it that turn, because Great Beyond then goes from 9 to 8. And you have another one in your hand because you're obviously going to play the fleeting copy. But this is super good when you play, or when you invoke the Celestials that cost 3 or less, like in most Zoe decks. Getting a Messenger, have its cost reduced by 1 because you have a leveled Bard, having a Mountain Scryer on board, costing 0. That can actually generate a lot of tempo, and the best part is that you have another one in your hand to play for free. This is almost kind of like a Zillion level up effect and a Victor level up effect, where Victor reduces the cost by 1 of all your created cards, and where Zillion creates fleeting copies of cards. So we all know how powerful those two things can actually be, even though they seem like pretty small things, but they win games by themselves. It's a very powerful effect. It's pretty limited because it's only for invokes, but the fact that Bart levels in deck, so you're always gonna get this effect if you build your deck right, is super powerful. And I think the meeps are a super cool, like, little synergy point that makes sense with Bart in game too. Because, I mean, what's Bart without his meeps? All these small pieces being here that make Bart Bart is very cool. And I definitely hope that when Bart eventually gets added to the game, that they kind of take this direction. The Invoke synergy. Next is a card by El Garosa. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right, so I'm sorry for that. Guardian of the Passage. 4 mana from Shadow Isles, 4/4. When I'm summoned but not played, grant all allied copies of me everywhere +1/+1. There are a lot of very cool synergy points for this card. One of them being Gluttony, for example. We have Mist's Call, Harrowing, even the Vaults of Helia or the Chronicler of Ruin. And it's like the opposite of Passage Unearned, where you get super punished for summoning a lot of units, and then your opponent playing Passage Unearned. This is like you get super rewarded for for summoning a lot of Guardian of the Passage. This definitely feels like an engine that can suddenly go off super hard. I played that Viego Factory deck a while ago. This is almost the exact same thing, and I could actually definitely see this being played in a Viego deck, by the way, where you have the Viego Factory, and then you just have like Guardian of the Passage as like another kind of factory that can get going sometimes and grow super big. Obviously, Viego is still better, but still, this would be a super interesting piece in that. And we haven't really seen any kind of card that really rewards you for summoning something. I remember cards like Go Get It that completely disappeared, and I tried to make a deck that abuse the summon effects that you get with Go Get It, because first you replace the unit. Let's say you play a Evros and Heartguard, giving your entire deck +1/+1. You then play Go Get It. It gets replaced by an ephemeral copy that gets summoned, so that's another +1/+1. And then you get a 0-cost Heartguard in your hand, so that's another +1/+1. By playing Heartguard and one Go Get It, you give your entire deck +3/+3. And I know that's a 10 mana play and super slow, but it's still really cool that it's possible. And if we find more powerful summon effects, that could be a pretty legit combo. And Guardian of the Passage would fit perfectly with that too. So it's a really cool idea, and honestly, well done for thinking of something new and unique like that. Next, there's a very simple, effective card by Thimbiki. 1 mana 1/2 from Shadow Isles, Cursed Wanderer. When I'm summoned, create an Absorb Soul in hand. And Absorb Soul is the card that lets you drain 4 from an ally. Some of you might remember a card that got added with LeBlanc called Thorn of the Rose, where a unit giving you a card in hand that was never played before because nobody ever put Gal in their deck, but suddenly that card was seeing a lot of play in LeBlanc decks, in Draven Ezreal decks, just because you get a card in your hand. Even Treasure Seeker. I feel like people are really sleeping. Like, I remember on day 1 when Treasure Seeker got announced, I said this is one of the best cards that got added this set, just because it's a 1 mana unit that gives you a spell in your hand. And that spell is bad, but if you get it for free, suddenly you can find a lot of use for it. And that's exactly what Cursed Wanderer does. You play a 1 mana 1/2. Terrible stats, obviously, but that doesn't matter. Getting that Absorb Soul in your hand and getting to choose when you use it is super good. You don't have to draw that card. You get a unit to block with, and that's all you need. This is actually like a super good target for the Absorb Soul too. It's just a 1/2. Like later on in the game, let's say you're in turn 10, your opponent summons an Aurelion Soul. All you need is something to block him with. Well, you play the Cursed Wanderer, you block, maybe your opponent does something, and then if you want to like say, no, you don't get that kill for free, you don't get that Fury proc, you play the Absorb Soul on the Cursed Wanderer, and suddenly you're just good. That's a really good play. Super flexible card. I love where this is going. It might be as broken as Treasure Seeker. I mean, probably a little less so, because summoning a 5/2 and having all that vulnerable synergy is just ridiculous. But this is a very powerful card, and I really love how thematic it is. And for the last user-submitted card, we have a very, very cool card. Champion Rel, made by 0-2. 4 mana from Noxus. Attack, give enemies I take 1 extra damage from all sources this round. Level up, I have seen enemies take 10 extra damage. NC is a 3/4. So obviously, we're gonna have a Rel Swain deck. Taking 1 extra damage from all sources is like a barrel that's on the field permanently, because he has tough, so it's going to be very hard to remove. Also having Overwhelm, very powerful for Rel herself, because when she attacks, that 1 extra damage will always find a place to go. And it is kind of balanced by the fact that her stats are a little weak, and the fact that it only happens on attack. So you don't always get that effect. You actually have to commit something. You can't just let her sit on the board like a barrel and then use it when you need her. No, you actually need to go in and attack with her. I personally love effects like that. It's a powerful effect, but you need to do something for it. The fact that you are going to have to go into combat with a deck that would really like to play a Bilgewater Swain kind of deck is a super great way to make a deck like that have more ways to kind of interact with the opponent and for the opponent to interact with you. So I'm gonna assume that taking 1 extra damage from all sources also includes barrels. So that's why there's like that obvious synergy that you want to play barrels with Rel so you can actually level her. We don't know how important that really is. So let's see what her leveled up form actually does. Rel, when she levels up, attack, give allies tough, and enemies, I take 1 extra damage from all sources this round. Super, super, super cool level up in my opinion. Because once again, it's really simple. But Rel really wants you to attack. She doesn't want you to sit back. Because it would be super easy to just sit back and abuse that passive effect that she has. So the fact that you have to attack with her, and then when you level her, you actually make attacking safer by giving tough, and also more powerful by making your allies do 1 extra damage. It's like a mini Dreadway almost, where Dreadway doubles your damage. Rel just gives you +1 damage. It just feels like such a cool card with such a simple effect. And it's really, these are the kind of things that I think Runeterra needs. It needs that interactivity. And Rel really, really pushes that interactability super hard because of the fact that you need to actually attack with her to do something. And yes, he gets rewarded for that with a keyword like Overwhelm and Tough. But that's only fair, you know? You gotta actually give the card something to work if you want to give them an interesting effect. That were the user submissions. I do have one more card to show because, you know, I like to create a card myself and I show it at the end. And what I did was I made a Demacia card called the Disguised Enchantress. 2 mana, 2/3. The next spell you cast costs 2 less. After the spell resolves, deal damage to me equal to the original cost. This used to be a 1 mana, 1/3 that just read the next spell you cast costs 2 less. When it resolves, destroy me. But I felt like that was a little bit too much. And I felt like it could be a bit more interesting. Like maybe you need 2 extra power in combat. You play this on 2, and then you're attacking as a 2/3, and then your opponent somehow blocks with a 4 health unit. Well, then you can use Sharp Sight on this card, deal 2 to her, so she becomes a 4/3 instead. And that was kind of my way to like balance such a powerful effect. This effect only happens when the Disguised Enchantress is on the board. So for example, if you play this on 2 and your opponent instantly kills it with something like a Cooling Strike, then you can either cast a spell right away so it still costs 2 less, or you can just let her die and then you lose the -2 cost. I did that because I wouldn't want this to just be played on 2 and then like wait until you could play a powerful card like Fuel the Rush or something 2 turns earlier. That would just be too stupid. So I felt like there had to be a downside. That was very thematic for Demacia too, because, you know, the Mage Seekers are looking for the magic users. So supposedly this card, the Disguised Enchantress, used a spell, got caught, and dealt the damage to herself. I don't want to go too in depth on this because I made the card. I'm just explaining what it does and what I thought some of the synergies and thematics were. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. I'm personally pretty proud of it, but I'm very curious to hear what you think would be a better thematic fit for an effect like this. And that's all the cards that I have for this episode. As usual, I hope you guys loved it. I hope you're looking forward to more custom card reviews. And me personally, I'm just super hyped for Bandle City. I'm loving the new card reveals. I'm super hyped to start brewing some decks. And honestly, I just can't wait to stream even more and upload even more videos. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you join the Discord if you want to talk about custom cards and submit your own. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.